when I look at, we're talking about, well, how do we message this? What do we tell people to get them to understand the nature of the threat? And when I'm talking to people, I put it real simple. I say, guys, imagine the Nazis, and then imagine infinitely worse. What if the Nazis had the capacity of modern warfare, including chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons? Imagine that. What if the Nazis were threaded throughout many nations, no borders? You couldn't just go to Germany and get them. Okay? What if they were everywhere and hiding behind kids in hospitals? Okay, to make it look as bad as possible when you took them out. What if the Nazis were highly financed with oil and opium money? Okay, with endless financing. What if the Nazis were driven by religious zeal? Think of that. And here's the biggie, guys. What if the Nazis were willing and in fact wanted to die fighting you? Think of what kind of enemy would that be? And now tell me this. And I've asked young people this. After putting that out, what would it take to defeat them? Can you do it while dotting every I, crossing every T, not enhanced interrogating anybody, not getting your hands bloody and your feet muddy? Can you do it while being a perfect little libertarian? Okay? And by the way, I happen to love the libertarians. And by the way, I agree with them on a lot. I don't think we can afford to be the world cop. I don't want us to be so isolationist. I don't want us kicking indoors around the world. I'm just saying, before we try to comfort ourselves and blame America first, we need to start understanding the nature of the threat. And then I put it on people and say, now you tell me how to defeat them. I don't want to hear pretty happy answers. I want to hear the reality. How are you going to defeat what I just described?
And think of how difficult it is to get through that process that you just stated, all those things, and come out with too much different from, say, current policies as were operated under the last, over the last 10 years. It's very difficult to get there, to get to the point where you can make all these distinctions and put all these handcuffs around how you take care of this. Chief point that everybody should grasp when dealing with this particular issue, not indicting a whole religion, but understanding that there is an element within it that does not value life, that does not value their own lives over their missions. They're willing to die for the things they believe in, and they're willing to take other people with them. And that requires serious thought and serious discussion, and not platitudes and hashtags and cards with little slogans on it. It takes real thought.
Yeah, and by the way, you just added, I gave 5, you just added a 6th, Fishy. A really good one. Not all the members of this religion are that way. The majority aren't. That makes them harder to find. Now they're in a sea. These piranhas are in a sea, and we've got to distinguish them from the other fish that look like them in that sea. It's even worse. They're everywhere. They're threaded through everywhere. And we have this ridiculous society, the same society that calls on the cops in Ferguson to show restraint rather than the people who are trying to kill them. We have this same society telling us we've got to thread every needle, be perfect, and blame America the second we do anything that might possibly offend somebody. And I'm telling you, let me just say the message right now, folks. There is no way we can confront this incredibly fast-growing threat without offending, without collateral damage, without taking out innocents. I hate to say that. I don't like that. And there's no way we can do it while honoring everybody's liberty rights to the way that we would like. These people are too dangerous, and they use those liberty rights against us.
And let's understand, too, how we get to this point, how we got right here to where we are, to where the left is not even willing to look at this in the way that you detailed, in the way that you've outlined as the threat that you've outlined it. They have been denying supremacy of Western civilization for decades. They have been moral equivalenting their way out of Western civilization first. And they've been saying all cultures are equal, multiculturalism, everybody has some, great thing to offer. Well, that might be so, but not all cultures are equal. We have seen it on display in writ large this past week that there are cultures that have better values and there are cultures that have worse values. And that isn't even to touch necessarily the religious part of it, although that is a culture. A culture is just a matter of a number of people large enough to be recognized as such. But Western civilization has been under attack by leftists and institutional left for ages because they don't want to ascribe to those values because, well, any number of reasons. It makes them they're full of their own white guilt or whatever. They use the conquest and the imperialist words around different things. Dinesh D'Souza did a pretty good job in one of his books talking about how colonialization and everything turned out pretty good for some people. It might not have been great for the people at the time, but the fact that Western civilization was pushed down into certain cultures has made them better in the long run. It was extremely painful, and they did a lot of horrible things. But Western civilization, since the body of it is still a force for good, and the left has been denying this for years, and that is why they don't look at this as a threat the way that we do.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Leslie.
Well, I think this gets to where we have an opportunity with the tragedy here, and that sounds very crass for me to even phrase it that way, but we actually have a situation where, because of the gravity of this tragedy, because of the scope of it, there are millions of people paying attention now who have been lulled into apathy for years, who may have actually believed the good news that the war was over and everything was peaceful and the economy's turning around and just make happy and go to the mall. There are a lot of people who have been shaken out of that apathy and complacency. It's not really apathy, it's just complacency. People who've been shaken out of that, 3.5 million of them went to a rally. And these are people who they don't engage in politics. They don't like politics because politics is ugly and it's mostly just people hating on each other, which it really is, by the way. We all know that. But these are people who know deep down in their heart and in their gut that something is very wrong, and they're very scared and they need to do something right, and that the enemy in their midst that they've been denying was an enemy has proclaimed himself to be their enemy, and he has come after them with big-ass guns and killed a lot of them, and they need to stand up and do something and say, not here, not now, not ever. And that's what those millions of people in France were doing, and all they could do was stand and gather and stand cheek by jowl with one another and say, we are all representatives of Western civilization, and it is a good thing, and it is a better thing than any other civilization that this planet has ever known, and you're not going to stop us. And that's where rallies actually do matter. I've started to see pushback from, I don't know, the pretentious clerisy that says, oh, rallies don't do anything, they just stand there and then they go home. Well, actually, the people who believe that politics is the be-all and the end-all don't really understand that politics is downstream from culture, like Breitbart told us. And rallies are what allow culture to change very rapidly. Remember civil rights rallies? That changed a culture on a dime. Vietnam rallies, Tea Party rallies. That takes something that is quiet and among a tiny minority in a culture and magnifies it and allows for cultural change to happen very rapidly. That's why, and then after the cultural change happens, then you can elect different leaders, and then your politics can change, and then because your politics changed, then you can fight the war to win the battle for civilization. So I think this rally is a hugely important first step in getting the culture to change enough so that we can change our politicians.
I think well, go ahead, JD.
Well, I was just going to say, and it's kind of a shame that just like with the Green Revolution in Iran, where is America? And by America, I mean the political leaders of America. Where are we? Well, doesn't seem like we're aiding too much. We didn't think it a big deal enough to send any of our high-ranking officials to the rally. We didn't think it a big deal enough to aid the Green Revolution in Iran. So these are examples of just not thinking that this trend, any push towards Western civilization, and that is really what we're talking about here, because the rally was in support of Charlie Hebdo, and the concept that you shouldn't have to fear getting killed for any kind of speech. You should not fear being killed for expressing your freedom of speech, and that is one of the cornerstones of Western civilization.
Oh yeah, I mean that rally to me marked the West, including all these socialist nations, okay, all these liberal nations, waking up, and at least for a moment, one single bright shining moment in time, they realized we cannot blame the victim anymore. Okay, and by the way, our president does nothing but blame the victim. He does nothing but, it's America. We cause it by our actions. Boy, if we didn't act the way we do, then Islam would stay and not do these things. It's ridiculous. These people have gotten to the point where, well, here's the situation. It's like having a rapist rape a dozen women, and now he's in prison. And we find one of these women and want to blame her for wearing tight clothing. We feel that she must have provoked it. Are you kidding? These people kill over a cartoon. These people are killing at a pace that far outpaces all the other groups on the planet combined, for any reason combined, and they don't care.
And just any reason, because the cartoon, the offensive cartoon, because you're not allowed to depict Muhammad, that was their excuse on that particular occasion. They will use whatever excuse is handy.
Yes.
Not drawing cartoons will not save your life.
Right, and it wasn't like these people marching were saying, okay, let's start kicking in doors, deny all Muslims everywhere their rights. But I think they're taking it seriously. Finally, oh my gosh, hidden amongst all these peaceful Muslims are a far too high concentration of non-peaceful Muslims. They're killing far more than anyone. And, sorry Ron Paul, sorry Rand Paul, but we're not to blame. Even though
Rand Paul didn't say anything about that. Ron did. Rand did not.
You're right. That was Ron. Rand has only been, in my opinion, a little too isolationist on this. Nothing like his dad, not even in the universe of his dad. I stand corrected. But while I still believe we need to be more careful. We need to make sure that when we use our military around the world, we show that we are not there to control, but that we are there to bring liberty only. Okay? We must be the shining light on the hill.
That's easier said than done.
Well, and frankly, I'm not concerned about bringing liberty to other people. Other people don't matter as much to me. I'm there to end the threat. Just like, when you're learning how to use your gun and when you're taking your concealed handgun license class, you're instructed that what you do is you stop the threat. You don't shoot to kill the guy, you shoot to stop the threat. I want to go to war to stop the threat to me. Whatever happens to those countries we're in, that's fine. If we're giving them a space to create freedom for themselves, awesome. We'll probably even hang around, and our companies will invest money in them. Best of luck. But we're primarily there to spend our taxpayers' money and our soldiers' blood and treasure to stop the threat to us. That's what I care about.
But we're defending liberty. You're right. Whether they decide to...
Right, defending liberty, not so much spreading it.
Whether they decide to
liberty.
whether they decide to see that light on the shining on the hill and let that light into them and let that liberty into their country, that's up to them. But
I've said it before, there's not a Thomas Jefferson in a lot of the other places in the world.